Thank you, sir. As a result of the pandemic, we've perhaps witnessed one of the most turbulent and uncertain times in human history. As we learn to cope with the new normal, it is imperative to take stock of the pandemic's impact across sectors and accordingly plan our next steps. Given the prolonged duration of staying, working, or even studying from home, more customers have started interacting digitally. Major changes have taken place in market situations due to an overwhelming engagement with digital media. This masterclass will focus on the spur in customer interaction due to a discrete and novel approach in digital marketing stimulated by COVID-19. The session will share specific industry examples and highlight marketing skills and roles organization will need to compete in the post-COVID-19 world. Three eminent speakers will be conducting this masterclass today, all of whom are members of Geo Institute's Program Advisory Council for its Digital Media and Marketing Communications program. Firstly, Mr. Anish Shah, who is Director at Forrester Research, USA. Mr. Shah has been part of Forrester's Total Economic Impact team for 3 years. He has worked with a number of technology clients to demonstrate the value of technology investments. He has also worked with various technology, including SaaS, security data privacy, big data, CRM, and sales enablement providers. Our second speaker, Dr. Aditi Bajaj, is an adjunct professor at Northwestern University and Santa Clara University in USA. She has significant experience in a range of quantitative and qualitative research methods and a strong record of translating research into actionable insights. In her present role, she offers a range of courses that combine the latest digital marketing tools with traditional consumer behavior and marketing theories. Our third speaker, Mr. Sameer Sheth, is the consumer product marketing lead at Twitter. He is a product marketeer with a background in brand strategy and go-to marketing planning, product strategy and design, consumer research, and creative strategy. At Twitter, he is the lead for the go-to market strategy and planning for conversation and interest consumer product focus areas. As I mentioned before, all three speakers are part of Geo Institute's Program Advisory Council for its Digital Media and Marketing Communications program. I once again extend a warm welcome to each one of them. We will now begin our masterclass. Participants can submit questions in the Q&A panel throughout the masterclass. In the interest of time, please keep them succinct and brief. We will try our best to accommodate as many of them as possible. Without further ado, I'd like to request Mr. Anish Shah to get the masterclass underway. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Sanchayan, for the wonderful introduction. My name is Anish Shah, and I'm a director at Forrester Research, a global market research organization. But before I start to share some of the consumer and digital marketing trends that we're seeing at Forrester in this post-COVID world, I'd really like to start off by thanking Dr. Deepak Jain, Professor Frank Mulhern, the entire Geo Institute team for inviting us today, as well as to all the attendees and participants for joining this masterclass. First, I want to start off by sharing this quote by Charles Darwin, who over 200 years ago said, "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives, but it is the one that is most adaptable to change." Even though Charles Darwin was referring to the theory of evolution of living species, this quote exemplifies the enormous challenges that businesses around the world have faced in dealing with this virus that has touched every nook and corner of this globe. As we look at both the implications for businesses in the short term and even the long term, the ones that are the most agile and that can adapt the quickest in this rapidly changing world with rapidly changing customer demands are going to be the businesses that are going to be able to survive and be successful in this post-COVID world. Exactly 1 year ago, in March last year, when most of the world shut down due to this virus, Businesses and industries had to quickly adapt to survive and ensure they kept delivering value to their customers as the markets and the worlds around them were changing. So let's start off by looking at some of the examples of how the world's biggest industries have quickly evolved and changed in this post-pandemic world. First, let's start by looking at healthcare. Telemedicine and virtual visits are up over 1,000% compared to the same time in 2019. And this is here to stay. Primary care practices around the world now have learned multiple benefits of introducing telemedicine, which includes expanding the access to care, reducing the disease exposure for staff and parents, preserving scarce supplies of personal protective equipment, a word that we probably never heard of before the pandemic, and reducing the patient demand on facilities. Second, let's look at the fitness industry. The fitness industry has constantly been evolving and responding to the needs of their customers. However, in 2020, the industry got flipped upside down, and the survivors that we see were really able to quickly pivot to offering live and pre-recorded individual and group training sessions online. The fitness businesses that embrace streaming video platforms, formed communities to drive loyalty, and offered a customized video platform and able to provide customized workout experiences based on real customer feedback, actually have the ones that have thrived in this post-COVID world. Here in the US, an online fitness platform, Peloton, actually has seen a 6x increase in their market share in just 1 year. Third, let's look at retail. Retail industries around the globe have had to adapt. Customers really don't want to hear that their brand doesn't have their size. Or once they like a particular merchandise, they do not want to wait in long lines to pay for what they want. A famous retail brand here in the US, Abercrombie and Fitch, during the pandemic has actually outfitted or retrofitted their entire fitting room sections with digital devices where a customer can request, ship, and even pay for the items that they like while they're trying them on to speed up the process and meet and deliver a positive customer experience. So when you look at just these three industries, we see a couple of things that really stand out. And not just in these industries, but in all industries have had to quickly pivot to reach and serve their customers through a digital platform. Also, companies had to gather data and understand their customer needs so that they can provide their customers with the most positive experience. And even though the world and businesses were on this journey of digital transformation, COVID has enormously accelerated the pace at which organizations have to change and reach and serve their customers digitally if they expect to compete in this post-COVID world. And we'll look at some trends, but we see India as even leapfrogging some of those trends in the acceleration of adapting to new digital challenges. To put the speed of digital transformation into context, let's look at the worldwide banking transformation. Once banks launched online banking, it took banks in the banking sector 12 years to get 20% of their customers to adopt to be able to trust online banking. When the industry introduced mobile banking, it took 5 years. And then when they introduced mobile checks deposits, it took around 2 years to get a similar 20% adoption. In today's environment, customers are demanding and adapting digital channels in record fashion. And if banks were to launch new digital features, getting to 20% adoption will happen in months, if not even weeks. So we see the speed at which businesses have to be changing. And what we see here at Forrester is that for most industries, the next 3 years will usher in more change than the past few decades have for these businesses. Now, in December of 2020, Forrester completed a global consumer survey where we surveyed over 200,000 participants, and we saw some astonishing trends. And these are not just trends related to millennials or young adults, but this is based on a sample of age groups across. And what we saw that post-COVID, 46% of the people are going to continue ordering from Amazon. 38% are going to order, or over 35% are going to order, purchase groceries online, as well as continue to order delivery from restaurants. 1/3 of the customers globally will prefer and still will continue to prefer to pay digitally. And 23% of global customers are willing to pay a little bit extra if they can get same-day delivery for a fee. So what does this all mean? This means that companies and businesses will have to be able to cater and offer these services that customers demand, or they'll lose out to their competition. As I mentioned, now let's look at India, which in some respects is really leapfrogging the world in its acceleration of adapting to new digital channels. India was one of the countries that took a real big economic setback as a result of COVID. In Q2, so April through June in 2020, India's GDP contracted by 24% and has been rapidly recovering at a great clip ever since. India has seen an 80% increase in online purchases, a 75% increase in social media consumption, and 71% increase in streaming content. When we look at this chart, we see that India was already in a phase of evolving a lot of their industries, and COVID has really accelerated. Let's look at media and entertainment. Platforms such as Amazon Prime, Gaana, Hotstar, Netflix, and JioSaavn have completely changed, fundamentally changed how this industry now operates and how consumers consume entertainment and media. Financial services, from Google Pay to MobiKwik to Paytm to PhonePe. Online retailers have gotten a lot more trust and mainstream in India, from Amazon to Flipkart to JioMart. Telecom, including Airtel, Orange, Tata Communications, and MyJio, continue to thrive in the Indian diaspora, especially with the number of smartphones in the market. And enterprise, when we look at Amazon Web Services, Cisco, Microsoft, Zoom, and even GeoCloud, have really revolutionized how businesses access information, store data, and interact with their customers. Globally, we're seeing marketing budgets across organizations shrink by 36% year over year. However, what's fascinating to see is when we went out and talked to global CMOs, 82% are saying that they're increasing investments in digital experiences. 68% are going to be increasing their customer insights and analytics programs. And over 60% of organizations will be increasing spend as it relates to digital advertising and marketing technology programs to connect and serve their customer base and attract new customers. So what's actually happening is not, when you look at these trends, what's actually happening is there's budget constraints that are going to be there for the short term, but traditional channels such as TV, radio, and print brand building budgets are going to be squeezed, and investments in digital marketing is also taking more share of the pie of the marketing budgets that are being developed. So there's a huge shift to providing digital experiences and digital marketing within organizations. So what does this mean for the talent and skills that organizations are looking for in their marketing leaders? So with so much change and rapid digital transformation in organizations, we at Forrester talk to global organizations who say they just don't have the right talent and skills to perform and rapidly adapt to some of the industrial changes that we talked about today. This chart highlights some of the current challenges that organizations are facing with their marketing talent and their marketing programs. Organizations are saying their marketing talent lack the technology skills or the decision-making power to make quick decisions with customer insights. They lack the expertise in new channels. The management of data quality is hard to come by. The coordination of different marketing service providers to ensure that a customer, regardless of the channel, has a consistent experience is very hard to come by. And access to real-time data is very hard. And these are just some of the challenges that we're seeing in the marketplace, and where programs such as the Geo Institute and others around the world are going to have to train the new leaders of the world in marketing to embrace them with such skills that are needed so direly in the marketplace. With this, I'd like to hand off the presentation to Aditi Bajaj, a professor at Santa Clara University, to talk to you about the changes in customer behavior that are fueling such an acceleration in digital transformation for organizations. Thank you.
Hi, Anish. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Gio, for this wonderful opportunity. My name is Aditi Bajaj. I'm an adjunct lecturer at Santa Clara University and Northwestern University. And I teach all consumer-related courses there, including consumer insights and digital marketing, social media marketing, and so on. And it's my pleasure here to be today and to share with you some glimpses of the type of academic research that goes on into unearthing some of the insights and trends in social media behavior today, and how COVID has acted as a catalyst in speeding up some of the trends that we were already observing for some time. So Anish, thank you for clicking for me. Going to the next slide. As I mentioned, this brief presentation is going to give you a glimpse of how consumer behavior is evolving today and how social media is really transforming the way digital marketing works. So going to the next slide, social media usage has increased exponentially. So I'm very sure this comes not as a surprise to anybody that social media is one of the key platforms that consumers are using today to communicate with each other. On this slide, I have a graph that shows the number of social network users in India from 2015 to 2018 with a forecast until 2023. Even prior to COVID, the forecast about the usage of social media in India was pretty strong. And as you can see, it is a consistently increasing trend. What COVID has done today is acted as a catalyst. So the latest data on this is not out yet, but we strongly believe that this exponential growth is now going to be even faster. And until 2023, the rate of increase in social media usage is going to really transform the way consumers interact, as well as how marketers approach these consumers across India. Sorry for that. Anish, if we can go to the next slide. So what does it all mean? It is very well to say social media is transforming how consumers purchase products, how consumers interact. It's also all well to say marketers should focus on social media and consumers' behavior on social media, but how does one go about doing that? Academic researchers often look at this question from a consumer insights perspective and from a psychology and sociology perspective. What is it that social media does for consumers that motivates them to participate on it, right? We all have busy lives as people. We have several commitments. Why is it that we take out so much of our personal time to be on social media and to interact with others on social media? What is it that it is doing for us? Traditionally, when academic research first observed social media behavior, they noticed a clear pattern in how people participate. There is this 99-1 rule, which essentially encapsulates the fact that 90% of participants on social media were what we called lurkers. So these are people who just, so for example, if you are on any WhatsApp group, you would be classified as a lurker if you were just reading the messages that people passed on to you, the forwards that people send you. Only 9% of the social media participants at that time were what researchers called commentators. And commentators or commenters are folks respond to WhatsApp or a message you respond. You would then not be a lurker, but fall in a commenter or commentator category. And only 1% of all participants were actually creators. And by creators, what we mean is people who actually contribute content. So continuing with the WhatsApp example, if you were actually creating messages, if you were typing out messages and not just responding to them, you would be classified as a creator. This dramatically changed in present times. So what we are observing now is that lurkers are reducing and the percentage of commenters and creators is significantly increasing. And I don't think that comes as a surprise to anybody that more and more people are now becoming creators and commenters. But what's interesting to observe is, why is that happening? So as a consumer researcher, you're always trying to answer the why, trying to understand what is it that is the driving force for this change. And if you look at today's landscape, it is not hard to pinpoint some of the factors that are driving this change. So for example, mobile penetration, smartphone penetration in India is very high. In the world, and specifically talking about India, it is very high. This access to smartphone and access to digital technology has made it easier for people to be contributors rather than just being passive consumers of information. Second is, firms are very savvy at targeting the underlying motivations that users have for posting content. And this is the point that I'm going to stress in the rest of my presentation. What I want to highlight is the fact that this is not just an innate change. Consumers are being specifically targeted. They are being specifically motivated to post more content, to become more active on social media. And finally, I will talk about the impact of COVID, how COVID is acting as a catalyst and speeding up this process of change that we are observing. So Anish, if you can go to the next slide. Talking about why do consumers post content? So at this pivot, a little bit about how researchers in psychology, in sociology, and in economics break down this underlying motivation of consumers. And specifically, what research has shown us is there are 4 types of motivating factors that encourage consumers to post content. And we call these motivating so a user get when you post content or when you become active on social media. Broadly speaking, we can think of 4 kinds of utility. In the interest of time, I've only highlighted the main 4 types. There are, of course, other types of utilities as well. So this is not an all-inclusive list. But in terms of the utilities, the first one is an altruistic-based utility, which just means that as humans, our desire to help out each other, right? So when we post something on social media, let's say in today's world, COVID is at the top of mind for every person. In WhatsApp, for example, and I take that WhatsApp example, quite a most frequently used social media platforms by consumers in India. So taking the example of WhatsApp, a lot of information these days that is communicated through WhatsApp is related to vaccines. So what types of vaccines are available, where you can get the COVID shots, how does it feel? People are sharing images of them getting the vaccine and so on. And if you think about why that is happening, because people want in some ways to help others, to motivate others to take the vaccine. They want to share information about where they can get the shots and so on. So that is one example of how altruism drives consumers to share content. The second kind of utility is self-image based. So we as people, we all seek higher self-esteem, and we engage in activity. And this essentially comes from the fact that when you share some information with somebody, you get recognition from them. I hope you can hear me clearly. I'm seeing some messages, so I'm trying to do my best. I hope I'm clear. But if there is something that I've missed,
no, you are very clear. You are very clear.
Okay, thank you, Deepak. But if there is something where, due to technology, if you miss, I'm happy to come back and answer that in the question answer session. So as from a self-image perspective, when I forward something COVID related, people recognize me, oh, this person is a well-informed person. They sort of look up to me, and that gives a boost to my self-esteem. So that is something, again, a kind of utility that I derive from sharing content. Third kind of utility, homeostasis utility, which is essentially what it means is we always seek an equilibrium. Any state of being either too happy or too sad is not ideal for us. So what we as people, as humans, try to do is when we experience something negative, we have an urge to share. By sharing our emotions, it helps to establish an equilibrium state. Common example, you were going somewhere, you got stuck in traffic, you had a bad experience, you shared it with somebody. You took a flight, you didn't have a good experience, you share your experience, you tweet about it, for example, right? Twitter is one of the most common platforms where consumers express their negative emotions when it comes to an experience. When people have a good experience, customer experience with a company, they often share positive tweets as well. And again, the motivation here is to establish an equilibrium. And finally, the final type of utility is social utility. And this is what we get as humans by connecting with others. So COVID has created physical distance, but COVID has not allowed social distance to creep up. Consumers, in fact, in COVID times, social media usage has exploded more because consumers are always motivated to connect with each other. They get social utility, social values in these connections. Moving on to the next slide. So it's very well to know that consumers get utilities, but how do companies use this information to take their marketing forward? So the first thing from a marketer's perspective that companies do is that they understand that not everybody who posts is equal. I on Facebook who have 1,000 followers. We all know, we all know some people in our own social groups who are very popular, who have a big network of friends. So when marketers start looking at social media usage, they begin first by identifying these influential individuals, what they call influencers and micro-influencers. So go slide. Who are these influencers? How do marketers define influencers? One of the most intuitive way is identifying people who have a great number of friends. So for example, if I am a marketer, I'm Zomato and I'm looking on Facebook or I'm looking at Twitter to identify folks who have a huge network. Some of the common metrics to capture that is number of friends, number of followers, number of views their posts get, number of retweets, number of likes, number of comments, and so on. And these are some metrics that are easier to measure, right? Because as a marketer, you can see those numbers directly on the social media platform or Facebook or WhatsApp and so on. So going to the next slide. How can marketers now pinpoint who to select? It's not simply a question of numbers. What marketers want to do is select the most influential people on social media to do the marketing for them, right? And one of the key ways of identifying those is people who act as bridges, people who connect two disparate, in this slide, as you can see, two disparate group of customers. So it is not just a question of numbers. If I am Zomato and I'm looking to enter into a partnership with say, I want to have a spokesperson or I want to run a marketing campaign with an influencer, it's not just identifying people who have partnership, it's identifying to connect different types of customers. So as Zomato, again, sticking with that example, who orders from Zomato? It's millennials, it's people in metro cities, it is people who fall in different demographic criteria. I want to reach out to all of them. How do I reach out to all of them in the most efficient? That is people who act as connections between these different types of customers. And so this is one of the ways as marketers, we look at how an individual is connected to various groups. And this type of data, actually, you would be surprised, is more easily available on social media than you would think. So these types of data are not hard to identify on say, a Facebook or a Twitter. Going to the next slide. Why all this matters. So ultimately, in digital marketing, in social media marketing, it is about reaching your customers in the most efficient and influential manner as possible. In India, as Indians, you know, we are all obsessed with Bollywood and we are all obsessed with cricket, right? It used to be that Bollywood celebrities and cricketers used to get the top in any marketing for the Brad Khans of the world. You would see them Amitabh Bachchans of the world, you would see them on traditional advertising a lot, and you still continue to see them, right? So they have not gone away. They still command top dollars as far as digital, as far as marketing goes. But what we are seeing now is the rise of influencers and micro influencers. And these are people who have not only reach, but also are bridges who connect different types of customers. And on this slide, I have two micro influencers. One is Chef Naman. He has a YouTube channel that is subscribed by around 2.7 million Indians, not just in India, but people of Indian origin across the world. And he's a very popular chef. He started out when he was 17 years old, and he has a huge and continuously growing subscription. What companies now, even companies like Asian Paints or others are doing, is they reach out to these types of influencers and ask them to talk about their brand. So it's not just, asking, again, going back to like a Bollywood celebrity to talk about your brand or talk about how great it is. It is reaching out to these micro influencers who have a connection with people and getting them to spread the message about your brand. I also have example of Kushal, and she is a beauty expert. So you will see this trend of micro influencers in food, in beauty, in travel, in photography, all these different niche fields. These are people who have a following, who command a loyal following, and reaching a specific customer group through them is very effective for marketers. So that is the end of my presentation. Anish, if you can go to the next slide. I would like to hand it over to Samir now. I identified some of the trends, especially how social connections are driving this utility of consumers wanting to connect to other customers.
Great. Thank you, Aditi. Great. Thank you, Aditi. Hi, everyone. Thank you again to the Geo Institute for this opportunity. I'm Samir Shet. Appreciate everyone spending their time with us. As mentioned earlier, I work at Twitter as a consumer product marketing lead, and I'm based here in San Francisco, California. You can follow me on my handle at Twitter. I'm excited to be here to share my perspective on the industry, and what I plan on covering are highlights on consumer behavior, some industry trends, and specifically a big moment happening in social media. You can go to the next slide. When you look at the past decade or so, we saw this shift in consumer behavior, emerging media formats, and how companies were really building products to engage with consumers. So right here, wow, Italy is so beautiful. Text has been around for a long time, from our days of using AOL Instant Messenger to now sending a tweet. And we then saw this shift to photos. And I think Facebook was a leader in building a platform in which people love to share and engage with photos. And they're obviously doing many other things now, but I think they were really a pioneer in that area. And then we saw video starting to emerge and still continues to be a driver in consumer engagement with leaders like YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram, to name a few. And then lastly, we saw this shift in VR and AR. And if you don't know what that stands for, it's virtual reality, augmented reality. And this has been around, but we started to see a bigger push in this area in the past few years with companies like Facebook, Google, and Snapchat investing resources and helping people teleport to mind-blowing experiences. With COVID, I think we'll see companies innovate even more on VR. In fact, the use cases with VR extend beyond just consumer applications to areas like healthcare and education. And if you're wondering why I show Italy, it was actually the last trip my wife and I took before COVID. So I thought I would highlight Italy. Moving on though. What I'd like to focus on today, though, is a fairly big moment in the industry. Audio and using voice to connect people to information and create real and authentic conversations. The human voice is powerful and creates an intimate connection between people and products. I'm going to go to the next slide. When we assess the landscape for applications of voice and audio, we've seen a handful of use cases for voice. Voice as a means of searching for information has been around for a while, and we continue to see companies like Apple, Google, and Amazon invest in the space. When it comes to usage patterns, most of the users in India are actually searching for queries online and are comfortable using voice assistants. A majority of users are also considering product and service recommendations from voice assistants and shopping online. More than 30% have used voice assistants to shop for clothes and footwear. And then when you look at like messaging, voice and audio, voice is a way to chat with people, and messaging application isn't really new. And we see this type of behavior much more in markets like India, Brazil, and other emerging markets. And then we're also seeing voice and podcasting starting to emerge. In music, you see Ghana, one of the largest music streaming platforms in India, really take off. And then, of course, social media, which I plan to cover and highlight a few examples in the coming slides. You want to go to the next slide. Voice is making technology more accessible. By 2021, we'll see 72% of internet users in India prefer to use a language other than English, and voice is a big driver of this shift. We're also seeing a large shift of people in India using smartphones to use voice. And this is really not a surprise, as we're starting to see more people around the world, in fact, upgrade from feature phones to smartphones. I'm going to go to the next slide. Now I want to talk about Twitter. Twitter is what's happening right now. Twitter is always putting the consumer first and wants people to have the option of starting conversations in different ways. We know that people have conversations in many different ways. Last year, we started to roll out the ability for people to use their own voice to send tweets. Sometimes a picture, video, or text doesn't really capture what someone wants to convey. So I think it's amazing that people can now send tweets with their voice. And here's just this GIF here, just illustrating how you would actually use this feature. You go to the next slide. We're gonna have a short video to play. The video that just played illustrates another use case for voice on Twitter. We started to roll out the ability for people to send direct messages on Twitter with their voice. And in fact, we've rolled this out in India, which is great considering the number of people who are already using voice to send messages across different apps like WhatsApp. One to the next slide. If you've been following the news and social media, I wanted to share a big moment happening in the industry. You probably heard of companies like Clubhouse and Twitter rolling out beta to start live audio rooms. So these are live audio conversations. So Twitter started a beta program late last year called Twitter Spaces, where you can actually start live audio conversations. So think of this as, connecting with people with your human voice and having conversations about a wide variety of different topics. Think of it as like a dinner party, a very intimate dinner party where you're just conversing with other people using your voice. So I'm super excited to see the industry kind of grow in this space. And I think this is a really big moment in social media and just voice and audio. I want to go to the next slide. So I wanted to conclude with a few takeaways. As you're thinking about voice, here are a few things to remember. Voice is being used across many different use cases, from search to messaging, and now starting live audio conversations. Voice is playing a pivotal role in helping companies build for the future. As you're thinking about voice, I think it's really important to keep accessibility at the forefront of your plans. Speech recognition, being mindful of different audiences that have hearing impairment. So just accessibility is really important. A large majority of consumers are already using their mobile devices to connect with others and brands. So always think of mobile first. And lastly, don't think of voice as an add-on or novelty. Identify key user needs, problems, or preferences that voice can solve for your brand or product. This could be a way to help people navigate an app or add convenience to the way they interact with your product. Now, this concludes our presentation. I was really excited to be here with you. We'll now move to Q&A, and I'll hand it over back to Sachin. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I thought that was a lovely presentation from all three speakers. I hope the participants enjoyed and learned from it as much as we did. So I will try and take as many questions as we can. While we're doing so, if anybody has more questions, please do post it in the Q&A tab. So I'll go to the first question. So what do you think will be the impact on metrics or KPIs used for digital marketing in a post-COVID world? So it's not been addressed to a particular speaker, so whoever wants to take it first.
Yeah, I'll take a first stab at it. I think in the post-COVID world, the KPIs that are really going to matter are what we call customer engagement metrics. Organizations that can keep customers engaged to their brand, keep customers coming back to their business, are going to be more valuable because like we mentioned with new platforms, brands are not necessarily in a competitive advantage. So key metrics around engagement are going to be the ones that are going to be driving the new age of loyalty. And that's what we at Forrester are monitoring for our clients worldwide.
Right. Would any of the other two speakers want to take a stab at the question? Should I just move on to the next one?
I think Anish hit it. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So the next question is, so with the increasing ubiquity of digital media, what role do you see for traditional media? Will it evolve and integrate with the digital counterparts, or will it soon be history in a lot of ways? Your thoughts on this?
I think I can take this right here. I think when you think about consumer receptivity, yes, we're seeing this large shift to consumers using digital media, but I think the big opportunity for brands and companies is how do you, when you think of your marketing plan, how do you think of complementing digital media with traditional media? And I think it's all about reach too. So what we learned when I was previously at Facebook, we had done some studies, and we had actually seen that when brands complement their traditional marketing plans with digital media, we actually saw incremental growth. And we saw that brands actually were able to reach audiences much quicker and easier when they complemented their digital media with traditional media. So I think it's all about reach, and I think it's all about understanding your consumer and really understanding their receptivity. I don't know if Anish and Aditi want to build on that.
Yeah.
But I personally don't think traditional media is going away.
Yeah, just to build on that, think about consumers. So I always like to think from a consumer's perspective. It's not that we are not watching television anymore. We are not listening to radio. What we are engaging now is this multimedia behavior, the simultaneous use of types of technology. So you are tweeting or WhatsApping your friend while you're watching something on television, right? So it is all these different types of synergies is what marketers need to use. So live tweeting of events, for example. So you're watching something, you're watching cricket, and you're tweeting about it, or you're WhatsApping about it. So that's from a consumer's perspective, that is what we are seeing, this watertight buckets of doing one thing at a time. We are all multitasking now, and marketers are increasingly building on this evolving habit to capture consumers wherever they are, at whatever they are doing at whatever point in time. Anish, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's a very good and very fair question. And what we've seen in the last number of years is that traditional media and marketing efforts, 20 years back, maybe 95% of a marketing budget. Before the pandemic, we saw digital media creep up to about 45% of the overall marketing budget. And post-COVID and the trends that we've all talked about, we see that acceleration going into the future. So it is not going to consume it to 100%. There's still a role, like Aditi mentioned, for traditional channels because we consume all channels. But what's interesting is the mix is changing. And what we know for sure is that digital media and digital connection and with your customers is going to be very important. And the market share shift into digital is happening. And we anticipate that going over 50% and into 60% in the next few years in terms of the marketing mix.
Okay, so the next question is for Dr. Aditi. So the question is, with the predominant role of social media at present, what role do you envisage for other forms of digital marketing like website marketing or email marketing? How does that evolve or go along with social media's predominance?
Yes, I think it is very powerful, especially in India now. Email marketing is not a new trend in the US, but now we are observing email marketing take off in India as well in a big way. So, again, if you order something from Myntra, you get notifications, right? Your order is placed, you get a notification on email. It's being shipped, it's been delivered. How was your experience? At every point in time, your experience is being captured, right? And in all phases of your customer journey with Myntra. So email marketing is huge. It is not going away anytime soon. Website marketing is huge. Again, first impressions matter. So think about how consumers learn about your brand. It is through these direct messages that go out from you as a marketer, right? What is the look and feel of your website, right? What kind of branding have you done on it? What is the look and feel of your email? So specifically, as far as those two channels are concerned, they're super important. I would caution everybody against thinking that social media is going to be the be all and end all of everything. It is not. It is not. Traditional media will continue to exist, will continue to grow, even though budgets are shifting. And these other forms of online technologies, email marketing, website marketing, they are here to stay. So just we all get very enthusiastic about social media, but it is not the end all and be all of everything.
So while we are on social media, I'll just take another question related to it. So here's the question. What is the speaker's take on organic reach versus paid reach? Like, don't you think that social media is killing organic reach and pushing creators to spend more to promote themselves or their businesses? It's not addressed to a particular speaker, so someone can take it.
Yeah, I guess I can take this, and feel free, Aditi and Anish, to build on it if you'd like. But yeah, I think there's a role for both. What we're seeing in the creator space is we're seeing, like, when it comes to organic reach, you see these creators across platforms like TikTok and Patreon and Instagram and Twitter, and they're creating these really authentic conversations and content with their consumers. And I think there's absolutely a role with creators, and we're seeing it happen now, like on these platforms like TikTok, that these creators, these up and coming creators, I'm not even talking about like big celebrities, but these up and coming celebrities, these influencers, they're just creating really engaging content. And when you have content like that's organic, it will just go viral, and you'll see strong engagement. There is a role though for paid reach as well, for brands. And I do encourage, if any brands are listening here, you absolutely want to be sure that you're creating authentic content, but there's a role for paid reach, and that's all about driving incremental reach. So I think when you think about your social media strategy, you need to be thinking about both, because you want to have that authentic content, that organic authentic content that will connect with your consumer and your audiences. But there's also a role with paid, and I think it's also really thinking about your objectives, your marketing objectives.
Right. So here's a question from the other side, actually, to what Mr. Sameer just mentioned. How do you decide the quality of your target group that you wish to reach? I mean, as discussed, large number of following cannot be the only basis for aligning with an influencer. So what is probably the methods that you follow to minimize wastage?
Can you say that again? You cut off.
Sorry, am I audible now?
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. So how do you decide the quality of a target group that you wish to reach? Large number of followers cannot be the only basis for aligning with an influencer. What would be methods to minimize wastage in this regard?
Yeah, I think it comes down. Aditi should. I was talking about influencers, and she highlighted some metrics. So I'd love to hear Aditi's take on this too. But I think it's from my perspective, it's not just about the number of followers. It's about the content. It's the type of content that these influencers are creating, and that's when you're thinking about aligning yourself with certain influencers. Yes, you want to. There's multiple factors in here. You want to take into account the type of content they're putting out. Does it align with your brand, the tone and equity and voice and character of your brand or product, as well as, right, like what is their following? But I think it comes down to content. Aditi and Anish, feel free to build on that.
Yeah, I was going to say, so obviously engagement and how long they stay on a particular platform, how long you expose your target audience a particular content is very important. But the ability to link it to financial metrics, like, the tried and true RFM model, such as when you look at a target group, how much of that audience has purchased in recency, frequency, and then monetary, and being able to put a value to a target group that includes engagement that needs to be part of that conversation. But you have to link it to some sort of financial metric to really understand the value of that target group that you want to go after.
So there are a number of questions actually related to the privacy factor when it comes to digital media. So I'll just take one of them. Probably you can expand and like on the other ones as well later. So as privacy awareness is increasing and it will continue to increase and become a mass trend, how tough is digital marketing going to become?
I'm so happy to hear that question. I am a consumer advocate. And I do believe that consumers now are becoming more and more aware of how their data is being mined by companies. And I believe that's very powerful, and that sends a strong message to the company. From marketers' press, it is transformers that are coming up are putting strict requirements on collecting data. So as marketers, you have to pinpoint why you're collecting certain information, right? How are you going to use that information? It is not that you can collect everything from consumers and then store it indefinitely with you. That is, in Europe, in America, we are seeing new privacy laws, and I'm sure as digital marketing becomes more prevalent, and you see some very, but marketers now have to justify what type of data they're collecting, why are they collecting, how long do they plan to store it, what measures they're taking to protect that data from being hacked or from being compromised. So that ability is, and from a digital marketing perspective, going to be a huge change, because if when you log on to Facebook knows who you are. They know where you live, they know what kind of work you do, they know what your behaviors, your attitudes, and they share it with companies, right? The marketers, we get this data from other social media. Now with related likes, it won't be able to sell that data. So that presents new challenges to marketers on how now should they customize their marketing campaigns for different types of customers. If you don't know their attitudes and personalities, how do you then target them effectively? So I think this is an evolving landscape. There are no definitive answers, but it is going to be challenging. It's not going to be as easy and as smooth as, okay, I've identified this group, I have all the information on them, and I can just go ahead and bombard them with my messages.
Samir, would you like to pitch in on this question? I mean, what is Twitter doing about this? I mean, I'm sure it's a concern there as well. You're on mute.
Yeah, just kind of building on what Aditi is saying. Yeah, privacy is very important at Twitter. We take it very seriously, and it's a big priority to protect people's privacy. And so we have specific terms of services on our platform that we abide to, and we're always thinking about building new products and features and just different policies to keep privacy at the forefront of our brand and our product.
Right. So we also have like a lot of students among the participants today. So I think a few questions that have been coming in different forms. So in this competitive world of marketing today, what are the essential skills for a budding marketer? And I think each speaker can take this question individually. And start with Mr. Anisha.
Yes, I think, when I reflect 20 years ago, when I joined Northwestern's digital marketing program, I think we were right at the cusp of how marketing folks can reach customers. I think what has happened today and what skills are very important is that marketing is going to be at the forefront of all business strategy. So marketeers are going to need to know how to talk to the technology teams to implement. They're going to be able to, because the customer now is at the forefront of all organizational strategy. And what that means is that marketing is taking a higher shift into the center of the organization. So skills such as how to not only reach your customers, but being able to align business strategy with technology, with corporate goals. I think even marketing leaders are now going to be blended CIOs going into the future, because they're going to need to know how to accelerate the digital transformation. So there's an evolution happening in the type of skills, and it's putting marketing more at the center of an organization's heart.
So Dr. Aditi, would you like to take that next? The same question?
Yes, definitely. So what types of skills are going to be essential? What, if you are a student, what do you need to think about? I think number one is don't be afraid of numbers, right? So make sure you have a certain comfort level with metrics and data, because as digital marketing grows, you will have to have that kind of familiarity and understanding with how consumers are tracked online, right? So you have to have a familiarity with numbers and metrics, and you have to be, have that ease of using numbers and translating that into strategy. And the second thing I would say is don't live in a cave, right? In today's world, you cannot learn marketing from a textbook. You have to be out there. You have to be on top of all the trends. I personally am not a big fan of social media, but I teach social media. So I cannot afford to just, think about it in theoretical terms. I have to be out there on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, TikTok, just to observe how consumers interact with these platforms. So the second thing is be on top of it, read. Just make sure that you know what's out there, what trends are evolving, and there's so much material. Even if Google has Think with Google, look that up. It has all the reports on how they have their own internal research teams, and they share this content, right? So look up Google, look at Facebook. All these companies share so much content, which is free, right? You don't have to pay a rupee for it. So be on top of that, be comfortable with numbers, and don't be afraid to evolve, right? Don't be afraid. Marketers have to be multifaceted, right? It's unlike being inside, let's say, an economist or a biologist or a chemist, right? You have to be comfortable with different fields of knowledge out there, and you have to constantly build on it. So that would be my, humble advice.
Should I
Samir,
take
you're
it?
next. Yeah.
Great, awesome. I love this question. So thank you for asking this question. There are three things I can leave, share with students would be, one is being at the center of culture. Like, just speaking for myself at Twitter, we're at the center of the conversations happening around the world. But I think just being immersed in what's happening in the world and just being very cultured about a variety of different topics, I think will serve you well. Two is having that balance, that intuition, that balance between creative and data. So yes, it's great to know your numbers, but you also want to balance that of being creative. So that's two. And then three, which is a skill that I think, all marketers should have. And frankly speaking, like all types of industries should promote this skill, is communication. I cannot tell you more how important communication is, both written and verbal. Like being able to communicate effectively, in structured communication, succinctly, clear, is super important, whether that's drafting emails, developing one pagers, or even developing presentations, and really being able to storytell, I think is very, very important. So
Thank you for those answers. I think we have time for one last question. So I'll probably get a response from each speaker as briefly as possible for the last question. So what do you think is going to be the next big change or shift in digital marketing? And we'll go with the same order. So Mr. Anisha can probably start.
Yeah, I think it's hard to really predict what's going to happen 5 years from now. But what we can predict is that things are going to change. What we saw, especially in India, is that industries, as we know, are just flipping upside down with the advent of new platforms. And what that means is that organizations and brands are actually going to lose a little bit of power to platforms. So if my particular brand is not on Flipkart or Amazon, I might be more loyal to Amazon and Flipkart than my actual brand. So we're seeing the advancement of new platforms, and those platforms are going to hold a lot of power going into the future.
Dr. Aditi?
Yeah, I'll totally build on that. I think the power of brands is going to decline, and they will not just lose out, as pointed out, to the social media platforms, but also consumers are now more informed. They are more aware. You just cannot talk at them. You have to engage them. You have to build a relationship with them. And that is going to be a challenge, because a lot of marketers come with this traditional mindset of like one-way communication, and that is not going to be effective anymore, because consumers are now empowered. Consumers control the conversation. You have to be on 24/7. You have to listen to them. There is no other way. So decline in power of brands and the rise of the new informed consumer.
Samir?
yeah, two quick things. One, I think we're going to see this rise in this idea around communities. And if you've been following like the news and the stock market, and you saw what happened with Reddit and GameStop, you're just seeing the rise of these like micro communities across different platforms, whether that's on Twitter, Reddit, Discord, Instagram. So you're going to see that. I think that's really going to start like even growing even more communities. And then I think like we're going to see this shift with the power of like influencers, right? Big and small. And as more platforms start to incentivize creators to develop content, right? We're already seeing it on Twitch and in Patreon and in TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. And I just think that's like going to be an interesting space. And then if I could sneak in a third, like I said, I think audio is going to be really interesting if you've been just following what's happening like with Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces.
All right, thank you for that. So we actually have more questions, but we have almost run out of time. So I would like to invite my colleague, Mrs. Prerna Gupta, to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Sunshine. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, very well.
Thank you. Thank you, Sunshine. And thank you, our esteemed guests. This brings us to a close of our masterclass 6 on embracing digital marketing to engage with customers in the post-COVID world. It was a very exciting and a very inspiring session. Thank you so much. On behalf of the entire Geo Institute team, it gives me immense pleasure to extend heartfelt thanks to our esteemed speakers and the members of Geo Institute's Program Advisory Council for Digital Media and Marketing Communications Program, Dr. Aditi Bajaj, Mr. Anish Shah, and Mr. Sameer Sheth. This masterclass series is our endeavor at Geo Institute to bring global scholars, thought leaders, and experts to discuss their research and case studies in interdisciplinary themes that foster discussion and exchange of ideas in emerging areas of relevance. So I'm very thankful for all three of you to share, your ideas and thoughts on, excuse me, this very relevant topic for today. On this occasion, I would also like to take the opportunity to express profound gratitude to our visionary founders, Mrs. Neeta Ambani and Mr. Mukesh Ambani, for their deep commitment to create this multidisciplinary higher education and research institution for India. To make Geo Institute a reality, we are grateful for the valuable guidance and unwavering support of our Chancellor, Dr. Marshalkar, and Vice Chancellor, Dr. Deepak Jain, who's here with us. Thank you so much, sirs. We are also highly appreciative of all the distinguished academic and industry leaders, advisors, and faculty associated with us who have helped shape academic programs at Geo Institute. Thank you once again. We have been extremely delighted to host participants from all over the world. Thank you for joining us today. We hope that this session was of significance to you, and we look forward to welcoming you all to our future events. You can also check out our past events, masterclasses, webinars, and other such inspiring sessions on our channels, YouTube especially. Do follow us on social media to stay updated on the latest from Geo Institute. With this, I thank you all for joining, and I wish you a very pleasant evening. Thanks.